Hi, and welcome to 50 Shades of Grey, the show where we show you 50 Shades of Grey. Let's begin. Here is the first shade of grey. You see, just grey. Here's another shade of grey. Bit darker, this one. 2 shades of grey. Here's another shade of grey. Bit lighter, this one. Still grey though. Still grey. Here's another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. And yet another shade of grey. The next one is pretty funny, I think. This shade of grey. See, this is pretty light grey. Still grey, but very light grey. Here's another shade of grey. Here's another shade of grey. 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 And another shade of grey. This shade of grey is pretty interesting. In the business it's called B12. B12. Good to remember. Let's continue. Here's another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. Yet another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. B14 is this one called. And you might think, B12 and B14. What happened to B13? I'll show you. B13, everyone. In the middle between B14 and B12. Funny. Let's continue. Here's another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. 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 Grey, 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 and grey. Guess what this grey is called? Q19. That's correct. Another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. I had a colleague once that also did 50 Shades of Grey. But in the middle he showed a red card. I'm not gonna do that though. I'm not a joker. I take my job seriously. Here's another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. They're really dark, this one. Really dark shade of grey. Another shade of grey. Another shade of grey. 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 And grey. Now I only have 5 shades left. These are my 5 favorite shades of grey. Let's go. This grey. This is really fun grey. This grey, you know, when you're depressed, you can just stare at this grey and it makes you feel better. This grey, just, I don't have words to describe it. This grey, it speaks for itself, you know. And now the last grey. And for this one, I don't need a card. This grey. Thank you for watching 50 Shades of Grey. That's all for today.